Hello, I'm Dr. Michael Schuster, and welcome to Conversations with Remarkable People. And I've asked my good friend Robin Steely to participate in this because I honestly and truly believe that he is a really remarkable dentist. He's a remarkable person who happens to be a dentist. So the purpose of this is to kind of have Robin share his story and his journey, and to help you kind of look at, like, it's almost like his own story. So let's start with that. Wherever you think you want to begin the story, to talk a little bit about your background and how you got to where you did, and what were some of the key events or people or places or things that happened that brought you to this place in your career.
Oh, thanks, Mike. It's really good to be here and share this with everybody. I can think back to my 8th or 9th grade year in high school, and I'm thinking about, I just decided I wanted to be a dentist. I don't know why. I guess I had a great experience growing up with my dentist. He never hurt. He was kind. He was one of those rare individuals back in the early 60s that used loupes.
Wow.
And as I think back on that experience, it was remarkable that he would do it. The little flip down magnifiers on his glasses. So all the way through high school, I wanted to, that was what I was going to do, and it just was natural for me. I participated in a lot of musical activities, played instruments, did those kinds of things, so I was always really good with my hands, made model cars, those kinds of things. And then in college, it was just kind of the natural progression of things. I remember my parents were both teachers. They both were in the education business, and college was, that wasn't a question. You were going to college and you were going to go to an advanced degree, and my mom has her master's, my dad has his PhD, so my brother and I there was no choice. You're going to college and you're going to do it. So I spent first couple years in a community college, and really the biggest reason for that was my dad was administration, and we got to go for free.
Sure.
So 2 years of college, and then 2 years at Western Michigan University to get ready for dental school. I remember applying for dental school as a junior in college, thinking, well, 3 years, get in, let's get this going, and apply it. Of course, in the mid '70s, the dental schools, there were tons of applicants for very few slots, and as a junior, I knew it was a crapshoot, didn't get in, so decided, I'll try again after my senior year, and was accepted actually at the University of Michigan in December of my senior year in college. So I distinctly remember that second semester of needing a genetics class to finish my Bachelor of Science degree, and going to class for 2 days with an Indian professor that I couldn't understand, and said, forget this, I'm already in dental school, I don't need that degree. So finished up everything except my genetics class, so I don't have a bachelor's degree, and headed for dental school. The interesting thing about my story is I married my wife 3 weeks before we started dental school, so it was starting a marriage, starting a new life, going to dental school. My wife's a hygienist, so she drove 30 miles one way, and I drove 30 miles the other way to Ann Arbor because it's too expensive to live in Ann Arbor, and that's the way we did 4 years of dental school. I decided in my career that the weekends were for my wife and I wasn't going to drive 30 miles back to school to study, so I got really structured with my time. I learned to eat lunch in 5 minutes and use that extra hour in the lab and study and do those kinds of things, and ended up in a good place, once I finished dental school. As I was applying, I remember going and seeing Dr. Bob Dorr, who was the dean at University of Michigan, and just telling him I put on my best suit, went over there, made my own appointment. He didn't ask for an interview, and said, what do I have to do to get in here? And he took a look at my grades and everything, and I'll never forget the advice that he gave me. He said, I want you to go back to Western Michigan. I want you to take a piano class and I want you to take an art class that focuses on sculpture. And so, that's easy. Those are 3 easy classes for me, 3 hours of credits. So I took a class in sculpturing, and my dad always had a wood shop, so I made wood things. And, worked with symmetry and those kinds of things. And it was really a fun experience. And it really helped, with my career in dentistry.
Yeah. Cool.
So, dental school was everybody has horror stories about dental school. The one professor that doesn't like you is out to get you, and, you cast the inlay and you happen to drop it on the floor, and of course the tile is tan with gold flecks everywhere. And so all these students are laying on the floor trying to see the hump to find the inlay, particularly during boards. That's always
right.
that's always an interesting experience. But, I went through dental school. I was good with my hands. I could see things. I could do what I needed to do. I'm very mechanical. So I finished my requirements, by December of my senior year, Thanksgiving of my senior year. And so I spent second semester just kind of looking for something to do. And I had a professor that, took a liking to me, and he came over to my cubicle one day and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, nothing. I'm kind of done." And he said, "Go up to grad endo and get 2 anterior teeth crowns to do, and I'll help you do them." So he taught me how to do direct waxing of posts, and how to prep the gold posts when they're cast, and how to have the porcelain done correctly. And so that was an interesting experience to go through, and a good experience for me. So school was fine. Married life was great. No kids. We had the dog, the typical first kid that every married couple gets. And we decided to move back to Battle Creek, where I'm from. We looked at going to Alaska. We thought that was a kind of an interesting adventure that we might do, but I think God had different plans for us, and it didn't work out. And so we ended up back in Battle Creek, where I purchased my dentist's practice. He was 46 years old at the time. He wanted to go back to California, to Loma Linda, to teach. Everything, it kind of fell into place. It was a large Crown and Bridge practice. And we worked out the arrangements, and away we went. I bought the practice with a classmate of mine. There were 2 of us, because I thought, I can't handle this big practice by myself. There were 2 of us, and that was before we really talked about philosophy or any of those kinds of things. And 2 years later, I bought him out, and he moved to the Upper Peninsula, and we haven't been in contact since. So at that point, I thought the number one thing to do was technical, the technical holy grail. So I started at the Pankey Institute, went through all 5 of their continuums in the 80s.
What year, in practice did you start?
This was about 3 years into practice,
Okay.
about 1985 or so.
Okay.
And I had done some management work with Jim Pride.
Yeah.
And so I was hanging out with some guys in Chicago that were all Pride guys, and a really good friend of mine and I decided, let's do Pankey together. So we went through all the continuums together, learned to do comprehensive evaluations, take models. I had tons of models in the basement, and still wasn't able to really get it off the shelf. So from there, one technical thing leads to another, which leads to another, and probably at about 1990 or so, it's like, this isn't working for me very well. I'm kind of burned out on this whole deal. And, you've got 2.5 hygienists and a hygiene assistant and 2 front desk people and 2 assistants, and you're in this small office, and you feel like you're chasing your tail on everything. So I heard Jeff Okeson speak in Grand Rapids from University of Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
And he really impacted me, and I thought, I'm really interested in this whole oral facial pain, TMJ area. And so I contacted Jeff, and he invited me down for an interview and to look at the master's program at UK. So my wife and I went down, met with him for a day, talked to the master's residents, those kinds of things. And before we left, he sat down and he said, I have a mini residency that is 1 day a week, and I take 5 students in it. Would you be interested in that? And I said, well, maybe. So they said, well, go home and think about it, and you know, we'll be in touch. And 2 or 3 weeks later, Jeff called me and he said, if you want the mini residency, I'll let you in. I've never taken somebody that far away, but you got to promise me you'll be here every week for 35 weeks. And I said, okay, it's a deal. So at that point in our lives, we had a 4-year-old and twins that were 2 years old.
Hey.
So
Wow.
my wife and I talked about it, and she said, let's, you know, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. So I condensed my practice down to 3 10-hour days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, got on an airplane on Wednesday night, flew to Lexington, spent all day in the clinic and academics, flew home Thursday night or Friday. We had good friends that gave me a key to their house, and you know, I had a place to stay, and it was to me, it was one of the highlights of what I've done in my career. I mean, I loved being in academics. I loved the learning that took place. I mean, I got to be with probably one of the masters of the world in orofacial pain and TMJ, and it was amazing. And I still go back every year for the alumni meeting because there's new things that
Sure.
Jeff is still teaching and I still learn. It was a great experience. So I came back to the practice, transformed the practice back into a 4-day-a-week practice, kept my Thursdays just doing orofacial pain work, TMJ work, and then kind of moved from there into, you know, several different areas. You know, did Steve Buchanan's classes on endo because we didn't have an endodontist in Battle Creek. I went and spent time with Dave Hornbrook and learned cosmetic work, all of those kinds of things. And we had decided to move into a new office. We built a new office in 1997. The old office was probably about 1,200 square feet. It was it was actually the office that I went to as a kid, was where my pediatrician was.
Yeah.
And I went every week and got my allergy shot there. So I was in this office, and it was very small. And so we bought 10 acres, half a mile from the old office, and built this office in the woods. And it grew really fast. I mean, it just exploded with numbers of people, and I felt like I didn't have control of things. So I looked at several different consulting groups and decided to work with Expert at Mercer. Imtiaz Manzi was the guy, and we worked with them for a couple of years. And I distinctly remember having a conversation with my consultant. My wife and I had gone to dinner with her one night, and I said, so where's this going? Because I didn't feel like it was going anywhere. And she said, well, I got to be honest with you. Every time I leave here, I get a phone call from Imtiaz, and he says, what's Steely doing? And I said, that's enough. Okay, I've just kind of paid enough money. I'm not, you know, if you don't have anything for us, why am I spending the money to do this? So,
Well, generally, what people do is they take you as far as they can take you.
exactly.
And if you were already beyond where they could take
Exactly.
you.
You know, it was just this unusual practice. They wanted more production, and I was doing new patient exams the way I wanted to do them, and I was doing dental work the way I wanted to do it, and I didn't want to go there. You know, the resistance was there. So you and I were in a class up in Traverse City, and I mean, probably one of the best things about that is you and I went for a walk that evening, and we just had some conversation, and I think you were bluntly honest with me, and I was bluntly honest with you,
Right,
and told you what I thought. And from there, we did some of the OBI training together, and I got to know you, you know, not just as a speaker on the circuit, but as, you know, a person, and what you said to me resonated and made sense to me. So we decided to do management with you, and I remember when Leona came out and did my evaluation and everything, I took my staff to lunch that day, and they said, okay, this makes sense to us, but we're only doing, this is the last time we're doing anything.
Yeah, right.
for this. So I said, okay, so,
Heard that before.
Yeah, away we went, and did all the, went through management with Chris and worked in it, and it really, I mean, it resonated with us. It was right. It felt good. It was what we want, where we wanted to go.
So what was it, because at that point that you were after, I mean, I remember the walk, I remember it like it was yesterday.
Right.
But, so you were, in other words, somebody else was your consultant, and they were learning from you.
Right.
I've had that experience.
Right.
But, so you were doing well, but what, and I don't remember, so maybe you do, what was it that triggered saying, I need to do more, I need to do something different?
I think it was, I didn't understand, the getting on the production rat race.
Okay.
The practice was going well. We were successful. I mean, we needed some tweaking with time, money, leadership issues, those kinds of things. But it just wasn't right, 2000, I'm 45 years old, thinking about, okay, what's the rest of my career going to be like? And it just didn't fit with who I was.
Okay.
And I think that's where the change needed to take place.
Okay. Make it more you.
Yeah, exactly. And I felt like I had a great staff, a really highly intelligent staff. They'd been in dentistry a long time. We were very productive. We worked well together, but it just wasn't going. It just didn't feel right.
Okay.
I don't know how to put a name to it.
Something was missing.
Something's missing.
Yeah.
And so when we started with management, it's like, whoa, this is correct. This fits us. And so we got all the stuff that we had to do, write all the policies and systems. We'd do a staff meeting a week, and every week we would write 3 policies and systems. Everybody could go home and sleep on it. The next week we'd all vote on them, and we'd write 3 more. And we did that for 18 months till we got everything done. Mm-hmm. And it was just, it worked. It just fit us. So after going through that, spending some time with it, and in the middle doing my bioaesthetics training, which was probably the most difficult technical work that I've ever done. And as you can tell by this time, I'm pretty highly technically trained.
Right.
I decided that I needed more personal work. I mean, it wasn't just the practice. I needed work on me. And so starting with performance coach and learning about leadership and learning about getting my time under control and my A, B, and C time and the structure of how I do things. I would read all of this stuff. I mean, my bookcase looks like your bookcase. Yeah. And
probably the same books, not the same books.
Exactly. So I'd read
like
all
I was going to give you a book this morning, you already had it.
Exactly. I'd read all this stuff, and I'd go home, and I'd talk to my kids and my wife, and my kids are in high school, and they're thinking, Dad's off on another in another planet now. But it's really interesting now that my kids are grown and married and stuff. It's like they sound just like I did, 15 years ago. It's my daughter came home the other day and said something. They said something in staff meeting at school, and I said, well, we got to figure out what our purpose is for this. So it's like, well, there's the chip off the old block.
Yeah.
So, going through bioaesthetic training and getting the staff really on board with leadership issues, figuring out how to make my time work the best, it just all kind of fit. And so in the last, 5, 6, 7 years, out of necessity, I've trained myself in surgical techniques, for implants, for sinus grafting, for all of those kinds of things. I finally have an oral surgeon in my town who brings those skills to it, so I don't have to do it all. I've taken the practice, and through normal attrition, my 2 assistants retired. I have my own assistant now who I had hired 10 years ago for an associate that didn't work out, and I kept her on. So we've gone from 8 people to 5 in our practice. We're productive. We work together. We just do it. It's us.
Yeah.
It feels right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm happier than I've ever been. My wife and I have a great life with our kids and our grandkids. I'm not working all the time. I can work 150 days and still do exactly what I want to do. It's just this is what I was thinking dentistry was going to be 30 years ago when I started. So, and to be honest with those that are watching this and listening to this, this place, the Schuster Center, is the place that really got a hold of my heart and put it in the right place. So for that, I'm grateful.
That's wonderful.
So it's been a wonderful journey. It's been a great journey.
But part of what I heard in the story, and just feedback, and I'm listening to the pattern in the story, was, first of all, you've always been passionate about learning.
Right.
So that's a given.
Right.
So you've always been, since you got out of school, you started learning. But the other piece that it seems to me, as we go along, we do have to find out where we fit, or like where we belong.
Our place in the world.
Yeah, in other words, some people have a faster motor, and they need to go faster, and some people have a slower motor, and they want to spend more time in detail and do things in a certain way. And it doesn't really make one right or the other wrong,
Right.
but it really does suggest that each one of us, me included, I have to work to find my place. Where do I belong?
Right.
And I was thinking, I've heard it said when I was younger and in the management circles, you have to build something beyond yourself before you build it within yourself. So, not to criticize any management company, but most of what is, you have to make it bigger. You have to make it bigger. I talked to a prosthodontist this morning who's working 6.5 days a week. 6.5 days a week. And he frets and worries about taking a week off. And he's world-class technician, but he hasn't done that other.
Right.
And so he has people that are trying to get him to go in another direction.
Right.
And he happened to run into a student of ours years ago at a meeting. And he stopped him and just grabbed him by the shirt and he said, "You're going the wrong direction. You're going to kill yourself." So I think that we work and work and work and work and work till we find it.
Right. Right.
And I think that's true of all of us.
Right. And I think we spend, I've heard you say it,
Yeah.
we spend the first half of our
Yeah.
life chasing that dream.
Yeah.
And for some of us, the second half comes sooner than others.
Yeah.
Some people never find
Right.
it. I think I happen to tap into it earlier
Yeah.
than a lot of people and think, is this all there is?
Right.
What am I going to do with it? And now it's like, I don't want to give this up. This is
Yeah.
too much fun.
Right.
This is what life is all about.
Well,
So,
but really one of the unique things about you, when I talk about the hero's journey,
Yeah.
Joseph Campbell, that we really don't finish the journey until we come back to give back.
right, exactly.
And so if I'm simply on that role trying to more and more and more for me,
Right.
I never have the time. Well, for one thing, for my family,
Right.
for my kids, don't have the time to be with them, don't have the time to share what you have already. And you see that working already.
Right.
You see them, so to speak,
Right.
kind of living out, not exactly the same, but
Right.
the values that you have.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, my son who's a third-year dental student, was home. I was
Yeah.
telling you here 3 weeks ago, on his fall break, and as a third year, they're starting to see patients. So he's sitting knee to knee with his 3-patient base, and we're talking, and he's been in the office and he's seen how I work and he sees how we interact, and I said, just tell them the dreadful story.
Right.
Just put it on your computer with a couple slides and tell them that a little disease leads to a little more. So he called me about a week later. I said, did you do it? And he said, yeah, I did it. And he said, Dad, he told me that he just wanted to have no pain and he wanted to keep his teeth. Now what do I do? And I said, so every conversation that you have now is no pain and keep your teeth. This is how we're going to do it. How does that feel to you? And he goes, oh, well, that's pretty easy. So I mean, my whole process, I guess, not only with him, but with his friends in school that I know and interact with, is if I can teach you some of these skills early on, you're not going to make the mistakes that we've all made. Yeah. And I mean, I even think about the way and I love my office. I love where it is. I love the setting and everything. But I would design it totally different now than I designed it 18 years ago. Yeah. Because things change. Yeah. My values change. My whole reason for doing what I do changes. And
it's called development, evolution.
Exactly.
You know, I read something this morning, and I really love it, and I'm not going to get it right. But he said, those of us who have evolved have to be gentle with those that haven't. And even in our own development, we still have to take care of the basic things.
Right.
So we have to take care of all those things, upline and downline. And but I think that just this business of exposing a few dentists to what's an alternative in school may help give them a vision that of something different.
Right.
And of course, it's all in the relationship arena about, and not that you don't do the dentistry, but why do you do the dentistry? Why do they want the dentistry? So that's cool. That's great.
I think, and I think, because you and I have talked about it before, the whole spiritual aspect of dentistry and relationships is so much more important than the technical arena. What would I tell my son to do technically? Go learn to do composite resins really well. It's simple. You can start doing it Monday morning, and you're going to do a great service for people. But spend your time developing yourself, putting your spiritual self first, getting yourself in tune with other people and with what your needs are, and who your God is, and look at the relationships, as you study Scripture that were developed there. That's what drives our lives. That's what makes meaning in our lives, and that's what counts in the long run.
Yeah.
So.
Cool. That's great.
That's my story.
It's wonderful. It's a wonderful story.
So.